Hello, everyone, and welcome to Chapter 5, which is over our management function known as planning, which, if you recall from Chapter 1, is part of our overall management process. Now, Chapter 5 is broken up into four sections. The planning and uncertainty section, which after reading that, you should be able to answer the question, how do I tend to deal with uncertainty, and how does planning help me? The second part of the chapter is over the fundamentals of planning, and after reading that, you should be able to answer what are mission and vision statements, and what are three types of planning and goals. The third part of Chapter 5 in planning is over promoting goal setting, managements by objectives, or what's known as MBO. So after reading this portion of the chapter, you'll know more about SMART goals and management by objectives. You should be able to answer that question. What are SMART goals and management by objectives, and how can they be implemented in the organization? The last part of Chapter 5 this week is over the planning controlling cycle. And after reading all of Chapter 5 and reading this part, you should be able to answer, how does the planning control cycle keep a manager's plans headed in the right direction? Now, if you recall, we previously described planning as setting goals and deciding how to achieve them. Now, we will take a look at kind of tweaking that a little bit, and we will say that planning is coping with uncertainty by formulating future courses of action to achieve specified roles or results. Therefore, we will be setting goals and deciding how to achieve those goals that we have set. Now, planning is used in conjunction with strategic management, which we will be looking at strategic management in Chapter 6 even more, which is a process that involves managers from all parts of the organization in the formulation, the implementation, and the execution of strategies and strategic goals to advance the purposes of our organization. Therefore, throughout the chapter, we'll be breaking this figure down, which are the details of planning and strategic management. So you can see we go everywhere from establishing our mission and vision all the way through formulating a grand strategy for the business, formulating the strategic plans, then the tactical and operational plans of that strategy. Then we will then implement those strategic plans, and finally controlling the strategy. Now, you would think planning just makes sense. If you've ever tried doing something without a good plan that was something real detailed and really important, you might have found out that, hey, I should have planned because I had this failure or that failure, or if I'd have done this differently, this would have been achieved a lot easier. So planning should just be a common sense, good idea. But there are a couple cautions to be aware of, such as that you need to set aside time to plan. We don't really have a lot of time. Sometimes you may be a little resistant to it because you have so many managerial duties you have to commit to and accomplish. So you need to help yourself by planning some involvement with your subordinates and kind of figure out what outside resources and opportunities exist to help you meet those goals. So having that plan in place can make things so much smoother, but you got to say to yourself, I need to make time to create that plan. And the other caution is that you have to make some decisions without a lot of times to plan. And we all know this happens. And some of us are even more fine-tuned that we need a plan and it has to be perfect. Well, a perfect plan may not always be possible. So even though a plan may not be perfect, it can still be executed. And if you can execute that with what you've got, then you may have to do that and still achieve the same goals or not as many goals as you originally set out to be. But that's just a caution when, planning or not planning. Now, there are four benefits to planning that we should talk about, and that is that planning helps you check on your progress. You should have expectations as to what you're supposed to do, and it shows how well your work is going in the organization. Another benefit is that planning helps you coordinate activities. You should have a plan for dealing with different events and who all is involved in that. So the plan should identify the responsibilities of various either departments or individuals to achieve those common goals. And another one is that planning helps you think ahead. At some point, for instance, your service or product with which you're engaged will probably reach maturity and sales will begin to steady out or even falter, and you need to figure out, hey, before it gets to that point, what can I do to make this better so that I don't see that falter or stagnation in my product or service. And lastly, above all, planning helps you cope with uncertainty. And we see this in for IT departments, let's say, where they have to come up with plans to overcome a natural disaster. How can the data be recovered? How can we get back up and running? So that's just an example of having the plan in place can help with coping with that uncertainty, because we may not know when it's going to happen, but we can plan on what to do if it does. Now, organizations generally respond to uncertainty in one of four ways. The first of those is defenders. And defenders are experts at producing and selling narrowly defined products or services. Kind of have that attitude of let's stick with what we do best and avoid other involvements. So they tend not to seek out opportunities beyond their present markets. Now, the next basic strategy type that Raymond Miles and Charles Snow suggested is known as prospectors. And prospectors focus on developing new products and in seeking out new markets rather than just waiting for things to just happen naturally. So they kind of have that attitude of let's create our own opportunities, not wait for them. So in a sense, those companies are prospecting for new ways of doing things. The next one is analyzers. And analyzers kind of have that attitude of let others take the risks of innovating and we'll imitate what works best. So they let organizations take all the risks of product development and marketing and then imitate that. The next one that we're going to talk about here are the reactors. Now, reactors have that general attitude of let's wait until there's a crisis, then we'll react. So generally the reactor is passive and reactive. So they only make adjustments when finally forced by environmental pressures. As we know, it's not good to react to a situation if we can plan ahead for it. There where we can be proactive rather than reacting. Now, Miles and Snow also introduced the idea of the adaptive cycle, which portrays businesses as continuously cycling through decisions about three kinds of different business problems. Entrepreneurial, which is selecting and making adjustments of products and markets. The engineering is producing and delivering the products. And of course, the administrative is establishing roles, relationships, and organizational processes. Now, an organization's reason for being is expressed in a mission statement. What the organization wishes to become, though, and the actions needed to get there are expressed in a vision statement. So you can see from our making plans figure here, we've got the mission statement. Hey, why are we here? The vision statement, what do we want to become? Then you can see we have different planning that goes along. So those three aspects, strategic planning, tactical planning, and operational planning, are how an organization's mission becomes translated into action plans. Now, previously we talked about how we have three layers of management. We have top management, middle management, and first line management. And with the three levels of management, we have three types of planning: the strategic, tactical, and operational planning. Now, strategic planning is what top managers do. They determine what the organization's long-term goals should be for the next 1 to 5 years with the resources they have available. You can see that tactical planning is made by middle management. And they will determine what contributions their departments or similar work units can make with their given resources during the next 6 to 24 months of the business, such as implementing policies and plans of the top management. They will then supervise any of those activities below what their level is so that they can kind of guide that first line level of management. Now, on the first line management, they perform the operational planning. In an operational plan, they determine how to accomplish specific tasks within the next 1 to 52 weeks. So, taking the overall mission and performing those well defined routine tasks to help achieve the organization's goals. Now, whatever its type, strategic, tactical, or operational, the purpose of planning is to set a goal and then to formulate an action plan. Goals is also known as an objective, so you can use those terms interchangeably. And that is really just a specific commitment to achieve a measurable result within a stated period of time. And goals are arranged in a hierarchy known as the means to ends chain. Because in the chain of management, whether it's operational, tactical, or strategic, the accomplishment of low-level goals are the means leading to the accomplishment of those higher-level goals. And you guessed it, we can arrange those goals based on those types of planning. We have strategic goals, tactical goals, and operational goals. Your goals should be followed by an action plan, which defines the course of action needed to achieve that stated goal, such as a marketing plan or a sales plan, if you've ever seen one of those. We also have the operating plan, and the operating plan is typically designed for about a 1-year period. It defines how you will conduct your business based on the action plan. It identifies clear targets such as the revenues, cash flow, and market share. And by identifying those clear targets, such as the revenue and market share, we know how we can measure against ourselves to make sure that our plan is working and we're achieving those goals. In the next part of the chapter, we talk about SMART goals. Now, anybody can just define a goal, but there are 5 characteristics that should be present to make it a good goal. And we represent that by this acronym of SMART, which represents specific goals, measurable goals, attainable goals, results-oriented goals, and target dates. So let's take a look at those individually here. Now, specific means that goals should be stated in specific rather than vague terms. That way there's no question as to the purpose of the goal. A goal should also be measurable. So whenever possible, goals should be measurable or quantifiable so that you can have a certain measure that can be justified to make sure those goals are being achieved. Attainable. Goals should be challenging but realistic so that your subordinates can actually attain the completion of those goals. Results oriented. Only a few goals should be chosen and they must be results oriented. So it's better to have a few than a large number of goals. You want to make sure that they are definitely results oriented. And goals should specify the specific target dates or deadlines when they are to be attained. So having those 5 characteristics makes a goal a good goal. Next, we talk about management by objectives. And the whole purpose of management by objectives, or MBO, is to motivate rather than to control your subordinates. So it's a 4-step process in which managers and employees jointly set objectives for the employee. So they sit down together and go over these objectives. Secondly, the managers develop action plans. Third, managers and employees periodically review the employee's performance. And lastly, the manager makes a performance appraisal and rewards the employee according to those results. So if you've ever gone through a process of getting in like a yearly or even monthly performance review, here's what should go into that. Setting the objectives, creating a plan to meet those objectives, go back and review and see how you're doing on achieving those actions, getting those completed, and look at it and go over it finally, and if possible, get some performance rewards, even if it's just praising and acknowledging your subordinates' accomplishments. If you've never been part of this type of process, hopefully in the future you will get the opportunity to be part of the whole management by objectives process, or possibly be the leader in setting that as part of your organization. You will see in your text we have some examples here of 3 types of objectives used in MBOs, and you can see how we have improvement objectives here. We say what the purpose of the objective is, and here's an example, and you can see that those are measurable. So if you can look at these and match that up against what SMART goals are and see how these objectives meet those. So let's go ahead and apply the information here and see if you can guess the answer correctly here. Melissa wants her employee Ralph to turn in his monthly sales report by the 5th of every month. Which of the requirements of SMART goals does this achieve? Specific, measurable, attainable, or target dates? Obviously the choice is D, target dates. So good job, everyone. Now the last part of our Chapter 5 over planning is over the planning control cycle. So once your plans are made, managers must stay in control using the planning control cycle, which has 2 planning steps here at the top, and then the 2 control steps, which are 3 and 4. Simply stated, in our planning steps, we need to make a plan, and then we need to carry out the plan. From there, our control steps are control the direction by comparing results with the plan. And lastly, control the direction by taking corrective actions in one of 2 ways, either by correcting deviations in the plan being carried out or improving future plans. Now remember that this planning control cycle loop exists for each level of your planning. Alright, we will conclude our lesson here by applying that information with the planning control cycle to this question. Apple has fired employees who have leaked news about unannounced products. Which step of the planning control is this? A, make the plan, B, carry out the plan, C, take corrective action, or D, document the plan. Obviously, the only choice here is C, which is taking corrective action. Hopefully you got that right, and thank you all for following along over the lecture over planning from Chapter 5.